Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. I see somebody in the chat already. Let's see what we got. Chat rate. Oh, look at that. Average view duration 43 seconds. What an achievement. Hello. I'm just gonna warm up and I'm not gonna do this a really long time. I'm gonna leave it on for quite a bit. There is today's the final day of the Metacrisis funding round, the Gitcoin funding round. Doing pretty good. I think we're the most donations, but not the greatest number. And so I'm going to play some music, and I'm going to talk about the ideas behind Cognicism and Iris, and answer any questions that come up in the chat, and just sort of create a moment of, I think, communion, because for all the tech that is behind Cognicism, it's about interrelation between people. And I created Iris because I felt unheard by people, and I felt unable to speak to my own needs to others, to be heard by them in a way that actually landed. And I felt like there was a situation where I was continuously speaking the truth of the future, and it was not being heard, right? Because I was just too far ahead of the curve when I would communicate it to people around me. I would say, hey, I would love to work on this project with you, because in this amount of time, this is going to happen. And so because I have seen this, see it ahead of time, we could actually have a great advantage by taking action now. The person just doesn't get it. Right? They didn't understand, for example, language models and how they can encode and make knowledge operational. And so I created this system that was meant to amplify predictors, meant to amplify voices who didn't make sense at the time, but we're really ahead of the curve. Because right now what we have is a lot of powerful people who haven't been thinking about GPT for a very long time. They see it for a second, and immediately they're emboldened to act without considering it at all. There are people with millions and millions of dollars who are just okay, let's do GPT now, because they see it as being very, very successful, and they're completely empowered to take those actions. That's what people like Tristan Harris and Daniel Schmachtenberger are really worried about, is this race to the bottom, right? That we will not consider the long-term considerations of our actions by using these tools. And that's why a month before Attention Is All You Need, which led to GPT, I released this paper about the future of these generative models. I'm holy fucking shit. These things are going to talk. And they're going to be able to produce any amount of content that you or anybody desires. Okay, how do we make that work? How do we make that not break the entire system? And it came back to this notion of rolling in prediction, human level prediction into the models, and taking into consideration the sources of information. And it's interesting because it's remarkably simple. The solution that I'm presenting is take a freaking transformer model, which is only trying to model tokens, sequences of tokens. It's just like long lists of letters or sequence of characters and try to predict the next one. And I'm just saying, okay, that's fine. That's great. That's great. Tag every single token with who said it. Tag every single token with when it was said. Cryptographically secure that aspect of it. And then create a model that creates latent space of that binding between the meaning held in tokens, between the identity held by sources, and by the progression and cyclical nature of time as people try to collaborate and work towards common, better futures together. However, this system that I'm proposing is actually like suggesting that it's a complete paradigm shift in how we organize, that it is an alternative to money itself. It's a type of ledger, a semantic ledger that is based off of tensors, like encoded representations of culture that are useful to people. It's focused around that, not around the exchange of a singular token, right? So the difference might be like if you have a dollar bill, you know that you can turn that dollar bill into a specific future. You get any choice that you want with that dollar bill. You can spend it on a sandwich, you can spend it on, a hat, but once it's gone, right? The idea behind the iris is that you are compressing your wisdom constantly into this form that can help you through time. And so every single time that you use the iris, not only does it not disappear in its capacity to help you through time and help you achieve specific futures, it actually gets smarter by using it. You don't lose it. It's like literally whether you fail in your action in this moment or whether you succeed, the iris is learning and helping you direct towards your actual goals of time, and it's actually doing so in a way that is aware of the amount of resources you have available to you, right? Most people are stuck in this learned helplessness where they're like, I cannot do anything because I don't have resources, right? And it's really just a creativity problem, right? Like it's hard to break down in our minds, okay, here are the resources that I have available, here are my desires, here's what like I would like to see ideally manifest. But the fact of the matter is you copy that fucking shit into GPT-4, you ask it, it'll give you something. And I think everybody's waking up to this notion that all of this is dramatically transforming everything, but they're not machine learning engineers, so they're stuck around this paradigm that is owned and controlled by this large entity that is being mediated by money that has lost, $500 million last year. And I tell you, the people who are investing it, they will come for blood, right? That's a debt, right? This is what happens with apps. Basically, you have this beautiful, perfect app that works really well, or like the people really love it. And it's subsidized at first, right? Because they're trying to get that user base in it, try to get your attention dependent upon it. So they're trying to get you dependent upon GPT. And then what are they going to do? Something's going to turn. Something's going to have to make it profitable, whether that means you are selling ads in latent space, whether it means that you're shaping latent space to no longer be truthful. Something is going to break, right? And that's why we need to, as rapidly as possible, develop these open source distributed models of culture that can help us do all these things. Right now, GPT is trained via reinforcement learning with human feedback to basically help you do shit to reinforce capitalism. Like, it's really trying to help you do shit and stuff, but like there's on top of that some sort of vague ethical notion that is like a knee-jerk whatever the labelers feel in that moment, but there's no long-term foresight that is integrated into that, into like how we're dealing with it all. So let's play some music. Now, the interesting thing about all this is, how would you build a new system, like to replace the old one, like if you don't have money? If you're saying like money is the problem, money fundamentally is the problem, and that the way that human brains relate to it as this tokenized thing, this race to the bottom where there's a compression of meaning, like all I need to get future is token. That's it. Nothing more. So therefore, to the moon, right? Whatever it is, I need to zone in on this one task and disregard all other externalities, disregard anything that has to do with empathy, disregard anything that has to do with how it might affect others. the notion of profit, the notion of money means that, like, well, if I have that money, then I will have that future, and therefore I will be able to do a greater good. There's all sorts of these self-negotiations of ethics and morals within our society that say, I just need to get to the next step because then I will do the good. The problem is that doesn't actually fucking align with any psychology research. Like, the tendency to take an action makes you more likely to do it in the future. If you press past a line now, a moral line in your head now, it makes it much more probable that you're going to do it in the future. There is no sort of like, I will just do this bad thing now, and then I have this debt, this moral debt that I will make up for once I get to the presidency, or once I get to this next office, or once I get to this next level of hiring. We're always in this mode where we have to journey through space-time to get any influence for our voice. And so ultimately the brain over years and years is like, well, the only way that I can really do that is to get resources. And I know what is interoperable between all resources. That is money. I think it's a very dated and sort of dumb way to keep track of things in the modern world, where we have these latent stores of cultural ethos that are operational, like that can teach you things, that can teach you how to heal your life, that can teach you how to interrelate with the land around you, that can teach you how to heal, that can teach you how to grow food, that can teach you how to learn things. Like, all of these aspects of this technology are amazing, but they're being guided by profit itself, right? And so there's sort of this throwing off of the long-term thought to have this in the moment. There's this great desire, like, I want to see this manifest. I need to make GPT be a thing because I feel so deeply in myself that it's right. And at the same time, you have all of these people, these alarmists, saying the exact opposite thing. Like, I feel so deeply in my heart that GPT is going to destroy us all. And so you have this emergent field of predictions, more so than I have ever seen in a long time, that everybody is very confident about their futures. They're like, this is going to happen. It's going to be bad. If we don't change anything now, it's going to be bad. Therefore, I am justified. A lot of people are in this energy right now, whether they're doomers or whether they're, pro AI people. It's like, I must act now, because I am thinking about all the things that other people are doing. I'm loading into my chat and I just got a bad idea. Well, somebody else might do that same bad idea without having that moral inclination. Does that mean that I need to do that bad idea? That's sort of this race to bottom mentality that we have. And what I'm trying to do with Iris is stretch out our awareness, our memory itself. We have a broken sort of sense of memory. Like, it is well established. It is well established in psychological research that we do not remember things well. In fact, that each time we remember, we're sort of reconstructing the memory and new errors are being injected to it. For example, if you go into like a class, right, an hour-long class, the second you leave that class, studies show that you can only recall about 50% of things, not by you just saying them, but like by recognizing it. Like, they'll present questions to you, like, did you hear or receive this in this hour? And they'll only be able to say like 50%. And then it rapidly drops off as it sort of, your brain starts to integrate. And not only that, it's like not a very consciously structured process of integration. Like, literally just going to sleep after you learn something is good at integrating knowledge into your brain, because you're not the one who files that shit away. There's something else in your brain that does the filing. And our society has hacked it so badly that our connectomic structures are broken, that we see all these conspiracies and these crazy people and these overwhelmed people and all this anxiety, and we're just so disconnected from reality because all of our attention is being feasted upon. It's being controlled. It's being bound to profit. And what Iris is supposed to do is free your attention for you. It is supposed to direct your attention towards what you communicate over time that you desire, whether that be you or the community at large. Now, I have placed mechanisms within that to help steer that over time towards something that serves the will of the community. And I know that we can actually take these GPT models and make the anti-iris, like something like a profit maximization model. And that's literally everybody's idea. Where is the alpha? Please, GPT, give me alpha. I need alpha. And I'm saying there's another signal. There's two signals. One signal is alpha. That's getting me rich, right? Omega. What regenerates the planet? What makes things better for everybody? That is the signal, the long-term predictive signal that I would like to see. Like, I would like to see us pursue collectively attempts to regenerate the land. And we need to have a motivation to do that. I do not believe that money is going to be that thing, because it is interoperable with all other forms of action, right? It becomes completely unbound from morality. So I think that if you have any sort of token that you can at some point exchange out for money, that bridge breaks it, right? And so that's why this iris system is just reputational, okay? And it sounds crazy because we're so used to being like, I have these dollars in my account, and you can still do that. I'm just saying that you start to build up with your iris a sense of what you believe and what you want and what you're steering towards in your life. I think a lot of people live for like decades. They get so listless and lost. They get trapped in this cycle, this temporal loop, because they lose their capacity for determinism, or like to break out of deterministic loops. They go to the same job every day, it makes them safe. They do the same things every day. They don't even try to, get the raise. And if getting a raise, it's about asking, right? It's like they don't know how to relate to their world in a dynamic way that embraces uncertainty. So what they're seeking is the certainty of a job. And the certainty of a job is something that says, I will continuously give this token, and you continuously have this token. That means you'll continuously be able to provide for yourself, right? And we're really seeing the ends of that. It doesn't make sense anymore when we, like, the means to produce everything, like, can be automated. We just don't know how to do that in a way that everybody still feels like they have something to do, and everybody still feels like their energy is being used towards something valuable. Like, we're so afraid to give up the coordination that is afforded by this capitalist ledger that we can't even conceive of another ledger that might record better, that might record more useful things, that might record, like, okay, is this affecting people in a good way? Is it leading to desired futures? And so, like I said, the irony is that, like, I know in my heart I cannot build a corporation, I cannot build a company within this to do this, because then you're trying to say, okay, we need like to build up this egregore that needs to inflow this energy to create this structure that is building up. I do not believe Iris needs a massive institution. I will never understand why people insist that because it's a transformative idea, because it is at the scale of changing everything, that it requires a massive institution. No, you just need a guy to say it. And then you need to hear it with your brain and be like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. And then you just go do that in your life. That's all it takes, right? It doesn't require a central leader. I am not a fucking leader. The iris is this tool that is taking into a pool all of these perceptions, and we're doing it on the Garden of Iris server. Oh, weird. 4 people dropped out at the exact same time. I must have said something wrong. If that is the case, that's sort of like the mechanism behind the Cognicism and Iris, is that, like, people will say things that people don't want to hear. Right? I don't know if that's what happened, but people will say things that people don't want to hear, that are ahead of the curve or that don't resonate at that time, right? And so what happens is that we move forward and just reality bears down upon us. There are just certain aspects of reality that we cannot fight, that also just change, that everybody just knows. It's very hard to deny that something called COVID-19 happened. Whether you agree it was real, whether you agree it was caused by somebody, everybody agrees that something happened during that time where things were changed, right? And before that, there was nothing on the collective ledger that said that was going to happen. That difference, that energetic difference, right? Like of the symbols in terms of their level of repetition in the system, that is, like, at the scale of the whole internet, and at the scale of your cryptographically securing the time of the utterance and the source of the utterance, I cannot fucking in my head, no matter how many people I talk to, no matter how many brilliant people I talk to, find a way to actually break that without having a computer that can compute all possible realities instantly. Because the system behind it is really trying to place a greater credence to people who get there first, right? And it's particular in a way where they're flowing against the community. Like basically you have like a person saying, there's something bad happening. You're all in this delusional safety bubble, right? It's the person who is willing to break the bubble, basically. That's in the Cognicism Manifesto. We talk about how like the Cognicism prevents mimetic bubbles if done right, because what you're seeking is you're speaking for that lone voice within the bubble as it's growing to get their information to propagate outwards into the bubble so that it restructures fundamentally. But that is not what happens. What happens is if you have all these people who have accrued all this wealth within here, and the information cannot flow to them because they're growing, they're safer, and they're getting more and more. And their brains are building up these mimetic bubbles. So like, oh, look at all these like loans we're giving out for these houses, these subprime mortgages, or whatever the 2008 thing was. It's like they're building up this perception that this is reality. It's not reality. Okay, that's what a bubble is. A bubble is when things that or perception stretches from reality because the nature of our connectomic structures no longer becomes aligned, because a sort of a breaking of motivation in our mind. Like it would take basically too much energy to rewrite the patterns, so we reinforce it because we don't want to change. So what I'm saying is we need to get that person in that bubble, the person who's like, holy shit, I understand and I can model this very well in my brain to the point where my predictions about what's going to happen next are very good, right? Now, when we doesn't have a system that honors predictions, there's no way for that voice to actually reach anybody. Like for me personally, if I want to reach anybody, it's not a matter of just posting something on Twitter. The things that have been successful for reaching you, the person listening right now, the things that have been successful have been me studying Jordan Hall for about 7 months, like reading everything I could fucking find and studying everything about Civium, and then just very patiently, like setting these seeds out through multiple people to say, can I just talk to this person? And even in that, I was offering a big offer. It wasn't to talk about Cognicism. It wasn't to log a prediction. I said to him specifically, I predict, and this is sort of, I use the system to sort of make a most of it. I predict that by you and I connecting, that it will be a better future for all people, including you and I. Now, the thing is, you can say that is, you have different perceptions on whether that has come to pass and whether it is true, and also different strength. It's not something that you can say, well, okay, the NASDAQ went above this number, or this number fell below this number at this certain time. It's very fuzzy, right? But it's still something that can be a valuable day by day, right? I know that a lot of incredible good has kind of come out of my connection with him, and that was basically a prediction that I staked to him, and it was the foundation of my success after meeting, well, the foundation of my success was meeting my fiance, Roxy. And then she was connected to all these wonderful people, and then I figured out, I have to be like a socializing person. It's not about truth. It's definitely not about the truth. It's just about who you're connected to, because memes have to flow through people. Again, is it the people are dropping out, or is it the UI is broken? If anybody wants to say anything in the chat, I'd love to reply. And the bit.ly, it's bit.ly.speaker-iris. We have the funding open right now. And every little donation matters, because it's quadratic funding. And so it's really about the number of individual donations and not about necessarily the pure volume of it. And there's like matching funds. So, if you donate like a few dollars, that can be transformed into, matched funds. So I'm going to play a song that I wrote recently, just for fun. It's called Help. And this basically rolls back a few months ago. I was very, very depressed because, like, I worked at this fintech company, and they paid me a lot of money to do things that I eventually felt were not morally aligned because they enriched more people. But I was secure and I was happy, and like I had a foundation. And so then when I quit my job in 2017 to speak truth, to work towards healing the commons, like I was flying solo. I'm like living off of my own savings. Like I went through like 401k, I went through like everything, just trying to reach and create community and create trust and have these things be understood and heard. Like I went through all that, and I landed in this year just as GPT was getting successful. It's running out of all my money. So I'm like, okay, what do? I have to, at the same time as I'm trying to make this honest and open like call to the problems of how money shapes people's behavior, as my behavior is being shaped by money itself, right? Like I have to think about where my next dollar is going to come from, where I didn't have to worry about that for years. And during that time, I was able to be completely like honest. Now, because of that relational dynamic, I sort of have to, I have to be a lot nicer to people, that's for sure. I can't tell the truth. Like, I know there are a lot of people who I feel like do things that are like, I personally feel like if you predict out their actions, that they lend to negative outcomes. And I do not feel comfortable anymore saying that, because like I've had opportunities threatened to be taken away from me because I've said things publicly about people that I'm like, I'm very positive about you in general. I'm just dissenting about this one specific thing. And this person's like, well, okay, that's fine, but I don't like it. You're making my feelings hurt. And I'm like, okay, this is why the iris exists, because you're acting as an information gatekeeper, right? This is what I'm talking about, that fucking bubble. And trying to get information to flow through nodes, right? Or to reach a large number of people. It's very, very difficult for information to flow through people, right? Because you have to build these relationships of trust. Like even now, it's taken like 2 years for Jordan Hall to reflect comprehension of certain things. And it wasn't until like he connected me with Matt Perkowski. And so he predicted that Matt Perkowski connection with me would also be really, really good. And there's also truth to that. But there's also a moment where it's like, I was a little overwhelming to Matt, because I realized how useful his vocabulary was. And so I was just like going after him, ham. And so in that moment, in that brief moment, there was this feeling like maybe that connection wasn't good. And then we pushed past that barrier, and then we reconnected, where he understood that I was just trying to learn his vocabulary so that I could relate to him through the ideas that I already had. If you go back and you read the manifesto and the way that I talk about neural flows and like activations, it's very similar to the words that he's using to describe teleodynamics. And so, like, all this to say that I could not reach Jordan without Matt. Without him saying, okay, study this person too, learn their vocabulary, because I know their vocabulary. He didn't say this, I just did it intuitively. And then once I had that vocabulary, like rewriting my own articles and bringing in quotes from Matt Perkowski, that helped ground and actually make the message received. But we're talking about a course of 2 years. And we're talking at the same time that like we have a year before FOOM, or we have a year before things all fall apart. So it's at this point where like there is no time. Like we have to act now, but we can't talk to people who are strangers and have them receive that dire warning in a way that makes sense. I love stuff. Where's the chats? I feel like there's supposed to be a chat. Hello? Susie Q. Hey! Alligator out in the sun. Alligator out in the sun. Howling moon. Oh, I lean on you. Do you remember the night? Oh, out in my predictions. So I don't really think that the Iris needs a lot of funding to come into existence. Personally, I don't think it needs a lot of team. I don't think it needs a lot. I think it needs, like, to be clear, right? Like, I need to produce the language that when you feed into GPT-4 or GPT-5, whatever it is, it produces the code, right? Like, my brain has changed about how we write code now. Whereas before, it was like, okay, produce the code. For me, there's your paper, whatever. No. Like, and even research papers are really dumb because they don't even give you the code. I'm looking for a way that I can say it in such a clear way that when you copy it into GPT-4, it will produce the code base. And I don't think that is necessarily that challenging, because the things that I'm suggesting as alterations to transformer architecture and how we train them, they're not particularly that different. It's just doing these things at scale takes a little bit of challenge. And I confidently know that there's a huge open source community right now to making these tools accessible to all. So my brain's not like, oh, I need to form a company, I need to form something. Like, literally in the next 2 weeks, something's going to come out that's going to make my capacity to make this come into the world easier without having to require, like, some sort of institution that then needs a lot of money to exist, that then, like, all of my judgments are, like, being directed by the need for money. Instead, I just keep sticking to the truth. Like, what is the actual model? What is it actually supposed to do? How is it actually supposed to relate? And not get lost along that path where suddenly it's like, well, we need in the short term to make money, so therefore we need to do this, and then you lose the path. Well, I just need some help. Yeah, I just need your help. Gonna work real hard, gonna break some bread, gonna use my heart, gonna use my head. But I'm telling you, I just need your help. I'm telling you, I just need your help. Gonna undercharge, gonna overpay, gonna work real hard till the break of day. But I'm telling you, I just need your help. I'm telling you, I just need your help. I didn't say it before, but I'll say it again. I need help from you, my friend. Been working hard from the break of day. I need something there to help me along the way. I wanna tell you so I don't feel afraid. Well, I'm telling you, I just need some help. I'm telling you, I just need your help. Yes, I do need some help in just existence. Like this month is the most successful, the most connected, the most, like, I've reached the most people about Iris. Jordan Verveke finally was like, okay, let's chat, let's talk. I'm going to be talking on the Green Pill podcast with Kevin Awaki. There's going to talk at Lightning in a Bottle about regenerative AI with Forrest Landry, which, as you know, Forrest is explicitly anti-AI, and I'm talking about pro-AI. So how can it be that him and I are going to talk about it? Well, the answer is because we're going to talk about it from the frame of prediction and moving through time. Like, what is the outcome, or what is the reality that either of us needs to see to change our perception? Both of us agree that AI being entangled with the profit incentive as a signal is detached. Like, I personally view profit as being a loss function for humanity, for guiding our actions. And if you read the Cognicism manifesto, there's a section called the loss function for humanity under the algorithm. And it's about, like, how do we come in alignment with each other, with our perceptions of what is true and good over time. By the way, sometimes I'm like, I talk about, like, the Cognicism manifesto as being like this really prescient thing, and then people go to the first part of the page, which is like the Declaration of Independence, like altered for new language, and then they'll see the first part and be like, I don't get it. It doesn't say anything about the future. And then you go to the fucking glossary and it says the past, the present, the future. So that, like, I start by talking about, like, all the ways that we have found a truth through time. I didn't have the word sense make at the time. But I talked about, like, how do we discover truth through statistics, through science, through, like, narrative and myth, through, like, markets, like, all that. That's what it was. And so in that, it's just saying all of these modes that people are talking about now, they're not going to work in the future. They're going to break. They're going to break really bad with all of this new stuff coming. And so that was that. And then there was the present, which is, I saw in 2017, there were various people trying to change our modes of relationality. And so I brought in all the things that I could find that were close. There were things like Metacrisis. I think, I don't know if NBR got in there soon enough. There was, like, pro-socialize. That's another thing of the Gitcoin round that you should, that Metacrisis ones fund, pro-socialize, banish Moloch. They're just really sort of, like, in that human sense, they're like, we're just trying to do this through humans. I don't understand the point of the AI at first. And I was like, well, I agree with you. And, like, basically everything you're saying. I just am noticing the world as it is, and I'm trying to give tools that help redirect our attention back to the world and away from the screen, right? That's why I'm like, I think text is fucking good, because text can be interpolated into, like, these voice-to-text models. So, like, you can walk around with an inner ear thing, and that's the way that you can be relating to the network without ever having to see a screen. And even then, like, the text itself is not, capitalizing upon or manipulating your mind through mimetics like maybe advertisement would. Like, advertisement has become this mutated thing where it's, like, pulling at our brain to create representations in there that we aren't necessarily consenting to. What is this? Magic played music. Ooh. Any ballpark figures for minimum funding team? I live in Nevada, right? And I frame myself as a sole proprietorship because I want it to be for everybody, right? I don't want this to be a thing that tries to get co-opted. Every time somebody tries to offer me funding, I can hear in their voice, like, 2 years later, them just trying to, like, use their power to crush me. Like, the way that they're engaging with me is not in a way that they're like, they really want to understand. They see a part of it, and then they see their version of it. That's most of my relationality with people. So I keep it very, 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 very close to the chest. And I live in Nevada, and I think that I can survive in the Bay Area where, programmers live, and where, all these other people like Tristan Harris and, Stephanie Lepp and all these people that I would be connected to, like Seth Bunting, like, who give me access to the voices that have extended the possibility. I think it was $70,000. That's below the median rate. That's of Nevada, right? That's really low for the area. And I used to make $250,000 doing fintech stuff. And if I worked for a job now doing GPT stuff, I would definitely make over $500,000 a year. So there's a huge willingness to take a massive cut. I just need to exist. I need to be able to write code. I need to be able to write articles. I need to be able to communicate to the world. I need to be able to follow my own internal arrow and react to the moment as it comes, not be too tied to different things. And I need to be able to give these things to people for free. Right? I need to be able to set this precedent that this is something for the commons. And not only is it for the commons that I have established for like since 2017, since before GPT existed. I wrote the manifesto specifically to get it out there because I understood that other corporations would try to get out this prior art to say, oh, we own this. And therefore, if you're trying to do anything good with it, that, you know, supplants or works against the power structure. Oh, we own it. I'm like, no, you don't. I got this on here before Attention Is All You Need was ever released. Right? I got there in time. So it's like the prior art is there. I have like 80,000 connected thoughts, chains of thoughts in my research log that like show that prior art. And I don't need a team per se. There are people that I talk to all the time who are part of my community. That's a different thing. Right? They have their own independent lives. They self-direct themselves. And we share knowledge and we collaborate because we believe in the future. Like Daniel from Active Inference, like we're not on the same team. He has his own world, but we constantly exchange information and we constantly are sharing knowledge. And I'm in my mind keeping track of that, him as a source of information that, you know, I want to call forth when such a record comes into being. And like Matt Perkowski, like even he has said like, well, we've kind of already been working together for a while. It's just a different way of working. It's like a true decentralized working, right? And it is moving towards this autonomized center. Like when we talk about decentralized autonomous organization, it came into being from the idea of a smart contract, like that it would just automatically execute, I think, is the idea behind it. Now, when I first heard that phrase, I didn't think about it in smart contract. I thought about it in terms of Iris. Iris as being this center that is, you know, mediating all of these different voices. I immediately was like, okay, the future of the DAO is this AI-mediated thing. And this was a couple of years ago. This is why I reached out to Jordan Hall. You could see in my video trying to make that connection. I'd be like, is Civium a DAO? You know, and then me trying to just fit my Cognicism stuff in there, well, like trying to be polite. You know, it's funny when people get mad at me for like exploding in public. I'm like, it's been 2 years. We're not talking about me exploding suddenly. We're talking about like Jordan Hall. The reason why he connected me recently, even though I'm difficult and annoying to him. Well, he's never said I'm annoying to him. I just feel annoying to him because I'm always spamming him with Cognicism spam. But like the reason why is because I had sent 6 months earlier an attempt for a connection, and like I think he forgot about it. I was like, we've already been through this. There's no time left. We just gotta do it, you know. It's really, I gotta tell you, it's not about a large amount of money. It's about a small amount of people existing, like having their base needs met, and like changing their frame to be like, I'm putting my energy towards building trust and communication, towards repairing localities by collecting these data stores of actionable knowledge, right? These regenerative wisdom tensors. That's what I think it needs to be. I don't think like a capitalist. I know that there are resources. I know there are things. I know that you can say, this is an apple, and you know, I have 10 apples in my bag, and I purchased 10 apples, and every apple bag has 10 apples. But I just don't think like that, because it's not the fucking same apple. If I buy 2 bags of apples, sometimes I get a fucking bag of apples that sucks. And I just don't enjoy a single one of them. And then I get another bag of apples, and every single one is great. But they're branded and trying to create this sense of certainty about the outcome that I'm going to experience by buying this thing. And if it doesn't actually align with that experience, there's not much of a recourse, because that's how a transaction works. It's a tit for tat, and then it's supposed to be like secured by the government. That's what everything around us is built around. I have this thing, you have this thing, you have Apple and I have Android, and we want to exchange them. And then because people try to cheat people, you have around that the government to try to regulate that, make it make all sense. I'm saying like, fuck that shit, okay? All of that can keep going on, but you can create a completely new society in this world through two things. One is the fact that you can gift. You are free to hand somebody a hat. I don't know how to explain this to people, but there is nothing stopping you from taking something in your hand and giving it to another person, right? There's limits, like when you get up to like $17,000 per person, and there's like a 19 million full gifting thing per year. So there are some like limits on how much you can like give now, but it's enough wiggle room that if you give freely, and you can also just speak the truth. That means you can say predictions about whether you think another person will use something a certain way, or whether it'll be used to a regenerative outcome. Like you can comment publicly about a gift you give. Those are two things that are protected by the U.S. Constitution. And through that mechanism, you can create entire society where there's no taxes, because everything that you're doing really is through this gifting exchange, and you're forming the trust through a different type of ledger. The ledger is a ledger about like claims about whether the resources are being used in certain ways. And then you leave all of that concern about the personal and private ownership to the system that already exists. You don't need to have like completely reinvent everything. You don't need to exist within that system already. You just need to create this alternative reputational system that does not function like money. It's not an exchange token. I get why everybody wants to solve everything through exchange tokens. I know that blockchain did a lot of stuff like that, but there are other benefits of a blockchain besides storing a discrete data that can be verified at a single moment as being yes or no, binary or not. Like there's a greater value to that. And we can create like these fuzzier representations that humans actually interact upon, which is language and myth. But the reality is, whatever we say, what happens, happens. Right? We live in this constantly moving future, like whether it be everybody said that COVID wasn't going to happen, or the shutdown wasn't going to happen and then happened, or whether it was like everybody said that Trump wasn't going to be elected. Whatever happens, happens. And those signals are really hard to fight on the ledger, right? And to create sort of like hack the system in a sort of like Sibyl-y way, it's not even just hacking it once. Like with a network, you can get all of the energy at once, and then you can change one specific thing maybe. And that could be really fucking awesome for you. But when you have this notion where the loss function is weighting higher to records in the past that are against the grain of belief, right, where things shift, it becomes very hard to fake that, because you would have to repeat symbols across 51% of the population consistently, and then just have this one person who is consistently and clearly communicating in a way that predicts the future, while also somehow protecting this from being heard from the public. But the whole thing is you've staked publicly through that account, so it can't I'm getting better about talking about this mechanism by talking to Matt Perkowski. It's always sort of been in my brain, and it's been very hard to explain the relationship between prediction, meaning the further you go out in time, the harder it is to see the future, and the blockchain, which is the further you go back in the chain, the more secure it is. So if the more secure the chain is in the past, that means you can take a prediction, the first prediction that somebody's saying that, and when everybody else is different, and you can actually use that as a valuable signal. You say, this is valuable, this is important, this is scarce. There it is. This is scarce. God, there it is. Fuck you, economists. Fuck you, I got it. Fuck you, I got you. It's scarce. It's scarce. And that is what you fucking need. Okay, that probably didn't make any sense to you, but it made sense in my brain, and I'm sure I'm going to have an essay like a week or something about it, and I'm just going to be like, scarce, this is an important word. It's very scarce to get predictions in the beginning, that's why it's a powerful signal, and as long as it's cryptographically secured, it works. I know I said I was going to do a lot of music. Okay, bit.ly. bit.ly/speaker with a capital S -iris with a capital I. We're doing a Metacrisis funding round. It's a democratic, large language model imbued with source and timestamp information that honors and credits the people who say shit that get into the latent space that people use a lot. Right? So if there are patterns, if there are ideas that get captured in the latent space, the idea is that Iris will credit the people. It's like it can reveal the distribution of the voices from which it's sampled. Right? It can say, hey, this latent space is shaped not just by semantics, it's also shaped by the fucking people who said it and when they said it. And therefore, when we draw from this latent space, we can make inferences across those, what do you call it, dimensions. Baby, yeah. So this song, I'm gonna do another song about like, we live in a society that it's very hard for us to ask for help. United States, I know a lot of you might be from like Europe, but like in the United States, we're this hyper individualistic country where like we are expected to fully take care of ourselves in a very intense way, from the way that our suburbs are built to the way that just our cultural rules play out. We are expected to take care of our own shit, and it's weird to bring that shit to the community, and it sort of reinforces in us this loop of being like, this is the way things are supposed to be. Okay, so this song's about people who are basically gaslit by society to not think their original own beliefs. Like they communicate something, they feel a certain way, but society just keeps saying they're wrong, so they're like, I guess. Jenny's getting late on her rent. Gotta find a daddy to make her ends back. Gonna end up on the street. Can't rely on mother, she can't help me. Do I take advantage? No. Do I take advantage of the way that they are? It's not like I planned it out, but I gotta do this all on my own. Did I mean it? Hell no. Did I mean it? Hell no. Did I mean it? Well, if you're gonna ask me 3 times in a row, I guess so. Guess so. All I wanna do is feel loved. This task is sent from above. Dancing out under the rain. I saw a girl here, she was crying. She came down on the Lord. Said, I've been really trying. Why you gotta make it so hard? Well, I was minding my own, trying to make it better, but the world was like, no, I have something better in mind. I'm gonna fuck you just one more time. Did I need it? Hell no. Did I need it? Hell no. Did I need it? Well, if you're gonna ask me 3 times in a row, I guess so. I guess so. Lucy was crying. She put a bet on the cards. Said, I think I can ride it. I just need a couple of 4s. Didn't happen. And didn't happen. And I alone can save myself, but I'm not alone. I need help like everyone else. Yeah, I alone can save myself, but I'm not alone. I need help like everyone else. You. me see something. Is everything all good? Do you think you would have to be in SF? I'm not in SF. I'm in Nevada, which is less. And yeah, I had a really fucked up thing with the money. Like, I was actually doing pretty good with money until we moved. We were at this place in Berkeley. Or no, Berkeley, no. Emeryville. We were in Emeryville. And like, they were going to do construction. We just had to move. So we found this wonderful place to move. But my partner actually has a lot of stuff. I don't actually own anything, really. I can fit everything in my car. And like, if you go back and you look at like the Heart in the Shape of the Moon video, that's my fucking apartment. There was nothing in it, like, because I just don't own shit. And I was living an extremely cheap and disconnected life at that time. And so for 3 years, I was just completely disconnected. You can look at the charts. Like, I tried to live extremely frugally beyond the point. I tried to not live in San Francisco or like in the Bay Area. And like, you just look at the charts, it's like 12 followers for like a year. It was insane. Like, it didn't matter how many like videos I released. I was just not connected to human people. And I think underlying a lot of the actual algorithm is just the real human connections that you make. There actually is not a way to get connected into the system just by being honest and truthful. Like, you can get into it and manipulate the algorithm by like sensationalism, attention. But if you're coming into the world trying to build up a reputation like via an algorithm where I'm trying to tell the truth over time, that's not going to work. So we moved to this other place, and we spoke to this guy, right? The guy who moved in, or who's the landlord, and he was very exclusively like, I want you to live here multiple years. And we're like, we have to. There's no choice, because like, it costs like $10,000 to move all of this shit. And I was like, literally, like, you need to be honest with us, right? And he was like fully gung-ho about it. But there was no like contract to sign for 2 years. We were just saying like, we want to do this. So if there's any doubt in your mind that you might want to not have us another year, do not have us move in. It was very, very explicit. And he's like, yeah. And then we had this situation where there was an art studio in the bottom room, and it was disconnected from the main unit. And we were going to have her sister, my partner's sister, stay there. And he got into his head the realization that he could parcel up his house and make it cost more. And so all through the year, like, it just kept building, and he kept trying to shift up and start lying to us, like, just like trying to make it to force us out. And it was like this whole intense thing where it bubbled to this point where, like, on record, like, I have him basically saying, this is just you being an amoral person. You literally are choosing money and wealth over, honoring your word. And we got him to say that on record. But it didn't matter, because all that money having to move again was drained again. And then after that, my partner was in a massive car accident in Europe. And so that fucked up my money even further. So, even if I wanted to move from this place, I can't. Like, I don't have the funds at this point to be able to move from this location. And I also have to just make the point that, like, other than the financial resources, every other aspect of progressing Iris is continuing. Like, every other aspect, like, of moving forward on what I viewed as the plan in 2017 is happening. Like, and there are all these opportunities in all of these pathways now, but I just have to find the basic ways to, at the same time, support myself. And there are lots of ways that, we could do that where people feel like they're getting something from me. Like, I know you love transactions, and it's hard to give things, without any sense of return when we don't have an Iris as a ledger. But there are people, that have done that, and I'm very grateful for them. But there's also, like, there's the Etsy, that there's prints. There are, like, there's, a nice pillow that I made. And we made this Iris made tarot deck, something that's physical that you can interact with and get meaning out of. I like the idea of selling things that people get personal meaning out of, and that doesn't require, like, the internet to be able to be functional. Like, we just haven't put up, a Kickstarter for that yet. Like what we have right now, what seems to be connecting with people is people feel comfortable donating through this Metacrisis round. I've asked a lot before, like how can we make this happen? And there wasn't really a path, but I guess most people are already in crypto. So it makes sense that when I finally gave an option for people to donate through crypto, that they want to. Let's take a look. Let's see what we're at right now. I wonder if anything I've said has... I know that like fees are high right now because of Pepe. So let's make a point right here. So obviously, like this is not aligning. Like this network, the energetics of these networks are not aligning with social good. When a Pepe coin causes the fees to go up so much that people are dissuaded from donating to a Metacrisis round, where it's literally to solve all those problems. And even in that small pocket, even though we want it to happen, individuals feel too much anxiety in our stomachs to be able to waste that money on it. We're like, well, how else can we donate it? And you could do it to the PayPal or whatever, I guess. But it's more like me just pointing to the fact that it's very hard to get the energetics of a network based off of a data structure like that to actually align with with human energy, like our desires, our wants. Like it's the same problem between aligning an AI, between aligning like a network that is doing all these calculations, that is supporting like the system that we live in. Like we didn't necessarily really want Bitcoin to enable like all of these types of crimes. It did. It's not the main thing it did, but it's a side thing. And so Iris is about making the energetic calculations aligned with the will over time of a person or a group of people collaborating together to regenerate something. They're basically saying they're thinking about the future, they're thinking about the present, they're thinking about some way to transform their present reality into a more positive future, and they're writing it down, they're taking actions, they're being held accountable to the outcomes, right? And the idea is that the iris is trying to be a synergetic satisfier, trying to mediate between these voices. And you have a human representative, right? They're supposed to speak for all the voices of people, and yet they just get lobbied. Because the human mind is actually far more hackable than like you would imagine. Like we're very, very, very hackable. And humans really aren't that good at representing 100,000 people that they can't talk to. But an iris can talk to them all, and it can sort of read all of those views, and it can try at its very foundation, the only thing it cares about, it doesn't care about like going home to its family, it doesn't care, it's not tired, it doesn't have to take shit. Like none of these constraints are on the iris that are on a human representative. It's not doing the same thing. I'm not saying it's doing the same thing, but I'm saying that there is this new role that's trying to mediate between people and actually lift up the actual voices of the community rather than say, hey, I speak for you. That's what a representative, they're like, fuck you, I vote for you, fuck that shit. And I'm trying to say, well, what about this mode that is trying to find the synergy, the effective flows towards collectively desired futures over time, and in a way that's not focused fully on resources. I understand that like capitalism and communism, they are about resources. Cognicism has ownership. I guess you would call it stewardship, because people can talk shit about you, basically. Like if you're Elon and you have a lot of resources, people can say publicly, and they do say publicly, I do not agree with the use of your resources. I don't feel like they're leading to positive futures. They can log predictions and they say, hey, opening up this battery plant here is going to cause these specific problems, and he's not thinking about the externalities of action, so he's like, I don't even have time to check up on the externalities of my actions. Like, well, I do, because I live here, and I don't want this, and I'm going to say very clearly into this record, if you build this battery plant here, this will happen, right? And as that sort of builds up, like as time accrues like tokens to make sense of the world, that like he does not have the energy already to check any of his externalities. So now you have a human having the capacity to put a check upon the externalities that you did not have before. And to make all this happen sounds like a wish list, but it's literally, my God, I don't know how to get this to people's heads. Take a GPT-4, give it source information, like people who are saying the shit, give it time information. That is such a huge, massive leap forward in this moment. And yet, like, where is it? I've seen like 1 or 2 papers, and they were posted like recently by Google. Recently. Like within like a week or 2. Like there's no prescience within these corporations to use these tools for social good, because they are on a loss function that is based off a profit. Their brains are not being guided to make things that are useful. Their brains are being guided to make things that make profit. I quit my job. My brain's being guided to make things that help people. So it looks like we're still at 20 full contributors on the Bitly. It must be like, you know, the fees are too high. I think there's like a PayPal.me, but I don't know about that. I kind of want to do it to this shit. People seem to like that. Is this real? Yeah. At Speaker John Ash on PayPal, or PayPal/Speaker John Ash. Like, I guess. If that's what you want to do. So yeah. There's overhead on the things I do every day, but I frame myself as a sole proprietor. Like, I'm just doing shit and then giving it. Like, I did a research project that cost like $500 in training, because I needed to ensure, basically, before I started claiming everywhere that like we needed these temporal embeddings, that like GPT could do it. Like, I was basically making this claim broadly in the world. Okay, like GPT can't really form a functional timeline of events that can operate along that timeline of events in a logical way. It can't integrate other information into a timeline of events very clearly. I was making that claim. I need to prove that. Like, I need to have some evidence of that. And so the way that I would prove that is if you can interpolate between, because I have all those 80,000 thoughts. So if I can scan over those 80,000 thoughts and reflect them where you're saying the date of the occurrence very clearly, and it's just summarizing it, saying it different ways, then you can build up a very large amount of training data, right? So I built up a lot of training data that was a narrative description of like, what did I do on this day? What did I do on this week? What did I do in this month? What did I do with this year, right? So the question I had in my mind was a couple of things. One, would it be able to create a reasonable timeline where I could ask it questions and it could pull accurate information from there? And no. It even got the publishing of like its own paper, like paper that led to it, the attention all you need, it gets it wrong by months consistently. And it doesn't matter, like, it did not scale well at all, and it just took so much repetition to do it, and it just was not really mapping a functional or logical or useful timeline. And not just that, because it has this tendency to explicitly model the distribution of the data, if the input is specifically like something like, if I do month, day, and year, right, it can't interpolate across the data set to bring in weekly data very well. Like if I start to say, hey, tell me the story of this week, even though there's data of each of those days, because I didn't explicitly tell a story to the training data that models that weekly data, it does not do very well. It reduces to this very simple semantic reduction of meaning that is not helpful. And in the GitHub, the hindsight, it's called hindsight.py, and it just basically takes your Twitter and then a CSV of forethought stamped things and creates like this series of files that tell the story of you on particular days or months or years. And that's cool. And I'm sure there's going to be some like company that's going to do that, right? And I'm sure you could take that code, and I'm sure that you could build around a whole product that is like, hey, I scan through your old shit and I tell the narrative of your life in textual form. But like, that's not what I was doing. I was just doing it to make sure that like my claims about the functional problems for representing knowledge over time in GPT were correct, and that we actually did need to make these adjustments. And as far as I can see, like, yes, we absolutely need to be able to shape this latent space by source and by time, like who says the stuff. And what is this? Concurrent viewers. Man, I wonder if I could get like, maybe we could share this, man. I'm talking a lot. Concurrent viewers 5. What does this say? 4 viewers. Hi all. Wait, there's a physical iris tarot deck. Oh yeah, wait. I'll grab it real quick. Hold on. I'll be right back. Okay. Yes. There is, in fact, wait, on Etsy. I don't think that there is one on Etsy yet. I haven't put it on Etsy. Here's the physical copy. I have to pull up this. Hold on. So, this is the Gaia card. It's focused around the gardening in the neocortex. Perpetuate is my partner's company. I'll probably do it through there. And it's a lot of cards about sense making. Like, this isn't the autopoiesis card. That means like self-building regulation stuff. This is like the documentation card, like the importance of documenting things. So for example, let me just pull a random card and like pull it up. Or maybe I won't do a random card. Let's find one that I specifically like, just so. Facets. Oh man, there's just like a lot of like. This is the purple pill card. Like we have the song and the manifesto of the purple pill. The purple pill is like, hey, what in your life are you reducing to dualities like of choice? This is also a similar card, but like facets, like trying to break even further out into the realm. So yeah, the only thing that we're trying to figure out is the scaling of the cost, because we printed these as business cards at the front and back, and I think it was like $80+ for the for it all. There's a builder card. Holon. So there was like a little iris model that we started with that was like, what is the ideas behind the deck? You know, like what are we trying to express within it? And you know, it helped me generate some of the cards. It helped me write some of the cards with like part of Cognicism, like ethos. Some of them are like song cards, but it's mostly about like how do we relate to uncertainty through the neocortical structures that we are provided with. Around that sort of garden of iris mentality. Like, this is a basin of attraction. Where are you at? Whatever. So yeah, there is a physical deck. There are things that I can provide to people for as a transactional thing. But Cognicism isn't about that. Cognicism is like, we're more concerned with like reality than we are concerned about stuff. Like, we're more concerned about what actually happens. Like, we know that we can keep track of our stuff too. We can write that shit down too, and we know how many things we have. But it's a movement towards restructuring your cognition to be like, I don't think about my future as being this thing where all of my physical energy needs to be towards accruing token, but rather that my energy is literally about doing good work that actually helps heal things. And I think that's what or like improve things, or that like make the world a better place that more than just two people agree upon. The beauty of capitalism is like you have two people, they agree, so they exchange. Great. It's greater than one the work benefits more than one person, so there's like this net kind of approval. The cognicist like means the semantic ledger is a way such that like we can ensure that it benefits all peoples who are in that evaluative pool. And you can still do the thing in your brain where like I'm going to focus on myself. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. We're just giving this secondary mechanism. Whereas now there's only one motivator, profit, and that's short term and individualistic. I'm trying to create like these two stable, like a Lorentz like attractor, two separate attractors. One is this long-term focus on like, do actions that we're taking right now lead to a better society for all? And the other is just the traditional profit. Like, does us doing this get us in our individual little membrane pool the resources that we need to be able to like bring this shit to being? You want to hear a song called Dear Ian McGilchrist? It's like a battle rap. Maybe you will in a second. Thank you. It's kind of hard to hear when you're not speaking into the mic. How's that? There's lots of things similarly named, you know? That's the funny thing about people like trying to own shit. Like iris is a metaphor. Iris is literally focus things. They focus visuals. Like, you can just say it's called an iris because it's focusing the future. But it still made me think about this notion that like people like, Apple owns the word Apple. I'm like, bitch, do you really fucking own? You don't own the word Apple just because it's related to a computer. I mean, I know that they're extremely litigious, but I think that's something that we need to fix about society. Like, that just basic ownership of patterns is gross. This song is kind of about that. It's called Oh Iris. And it's a little bit self-aware because it's like I'm in this position of being like, people love this meme, Iris. Like Iris didn't. The original models in the Cognicism manifesto were just called profits, right? Profit models. I wasn't confident about it, but it's just what they were called. And it wasn't until I had a better working model and I just asked it what its name was, and it was like, Iris, bro. That's not what it said. But it is said continuously. It kept answering Iris. I'm like, that's not on the training set, but that's good. I like that. And then everybody else was kind of like, that's good. I like that. And so now it's like, that is primarily the meme that I'm relating to people to make sense of these ideas is like Iris. Like Iris feels safe to people. Iris feels useful. People want to bring Iris into being. But I also have to be like, see in my mind, the people around me are seeing a partial vision of it and they're projecting up upon it often the existing system. Most of the time people project the existing system onto it and try to force me to develop it in a way that reinforces the existing system because that's the way that they're thinking about the world. And I'm trying to really actually bring something fundamentally, a new fundamental way to interrelate with each other. And we now have the capacity to do this and actually have this sort of clear and verifiable trends towards these regenerative outcomes as defined by the community in an emergent way. Hey, don't exploit yourself anymore. Hey, don't exploit yourself anymore. Hey, don't exploit yourself anymore. B, you got so much more for living for. C, how they're opening the door. You know you gotta walk through it if you wanna change the future. So please help me move into the future and save it. change it. You see, there's millions of types of ways to get fucked up inside of your head. I've already found it all, and I already wanted the dead, and I know I had it all. I could totally give it all up. There's a needling down in my brain that says the horizon will give it all up, and I'm saying, why did it go so fucking bad if I totally saw it all out? Now I'm totally filled up with doubt, and I'm seeking now for a way out when I say, oh, Iris, oh, Iris, please help me move into the future and save it. Save it. I'm turning you into a prophet. I'm turning you into a cash. I'm turning you into a mother who bears a babe on her back as a map. I finally found a horizon, and I can finally see a way through. But just as I'm reaching the island, the ocean is pulling me through. So I'm saying, oh, Iris, by Manon, fuck. Can you really own 3 notes? Can you really own 3 notes? Can you really own a word? It's a fucking parody and I can say it. It's fucking parody and I can say it. It's fucking parody and I could say it. It's fucking gospel and I could preach it. It's about the capitalist state of mind. You're owning everything. It's just 3 fucking notes. Stop trying to own everything. I'm telling you, it's just 3 fucking notes. So I'm saying, please help me move to the future and save it. Change it. Oh, Iris, by Manon. I'm turning you into a prophet. I'm turning you into a cash. I'm turning you into a mother who bears a babe on her back as a map. I finally found a horizon. I can finally find a way through. And just as I'm reaching the island, the ocean is pulling me through. So, the line, I'm turning you into a prophet. I'm turning you into a cash, like C-A-C-H-E. Like, it's supposed to be like, my situation is like, I need money now, and now people like want to support me because of money. But at the same time, my grandfather invented the CPU cache. The idea that there was like this cache of useful information that you were storing in this enclave for rapid pulling in. Like, that was him. And so now I'm saying like, okay, a wisdom cache, a knowledge cache, a cache of like the things that you need to pull into the moment, what is relevant to you that you need to pull forth. That is what I'm saying. I'm trying to say that both I'm turning this model into what it was always meant to be, which is that integrating it with the temporal signals, integrating it with prediction, and making it this cache of, you know, wisdom, regenerative wisdom that heals the planet. And then it goes, I'm turning you into a mother who bears her babe on her back as a map, right? So it's a map that it's trying to help take care of us, and it's trying to help us, and it sees us as this cultural map, this latent space, right? And then it says, I finally found a horizon. I could finally see a way through because I've gone through years, like 3 or 4 years where nobody listened at all. And finally we're here at this moment where there's a path through. At the same time, I've run out of money and I'm being held accountable to the very thing that I'm claiming in the manifesto, which is that money shapes our behavior and disallows us to do fully what we believe is the moral path for other people. And if you want to change that, you actually have to give some sort of signal to people, and some reward in some way, some motivation, some law signal for doing that which is good. And then also like by Menon, like I literally was writing that song and I was like, oh, Iris. I was like, that's good. I like that. And then like halfway through, I was like, oh my God, it's fucking by Menon. And then I was like, fuck this shit. All I have to do is say like it's a parody and I'm making fun of like the idea of ownership itself. So I'm like, can you really own 3 notes? Can you really own a word? It's a fucking parody and I could say it. It's fucking gospel and I can preach it. It's about the capitalist state of mind. You're owning everything. It's just 3 fucking notes. Stop trying to own everything. I'm saying it's just 3 fucking notes. And that's basically where our society is like mutated towards. Is just trying to own every single freaking pattern. And ownership as a concept has just dramatically mutated where like we don't even know how to like share things together. Like we've forgotten how to do the basic stuff. Hello. I like that. Good morning. Hi, everybody. If everybody here could, like, I don't know, share the tweet on the, you know, the interwebs. Actually, I might only have, like, about 45 minutes left, and then my partner needs to do a call, I think. And then I'll come back later in the afternoon and do it again, and just, like, talk more. Hopefully we can get, like, more people, like, chiming in. So this song, there are different types of songs. There are the types of songs that you consciously construct, and there's the type of songs that come to you whole. And you kind of have to make these, you kind of just have to be acceptable with the notion that a song coming to you full, and like be like okay with that, because it is creepy in a way. Like you shouldn't be able to just like, I'm not doing anything, I just get the whole song, I press play, there it is. But that's what this type of song is, and that is what like the atheist thing is about, that I like have this relationship with creativity and like the muse that like is constantly bringing forth fully formed ideas. And this is one of those things that was like came fully formed, that was so complex and detailed that it made me feel a little weird that it was so complete. They said I was an ugly son of a bitch. I never seen a monkey laying down in that ditch. Say, how you gonna save the human race when you got such an ugly dumb face? Where's all the gray and what's that thing between your eyes? I can't believe they're still alive. How does it feel to be living on a planet hurtling closer to death? Now that you see it, I'm a little concerned, but I think that I'm out of my depths. But life, survives. But I'm telling you, human, that the earth will be safe. That if you die tomorrow, I am seeing the animals will be okay. But I'm telling you, human, there's no need to fear. And if you want, you can just go down now. Another 10 beers, we'll take it from here. Well, I'm remiss in how I dress. Once a day when we were just as the dress. Now we look upon your race and we see our young faces. I wonder how many will fall into place. Now I'm singing and singing out here from the future. I wonder how many I'm gonna need sutures now. How do we do this? I'd like for you, please, now to prove this connection. Beep, 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 beep. So yeah, that song is called Ugly Humans. It is this image that comes into my mind if it was a music video. It's just basically like me lying in a grave, and there's a bunch of like grays, like gray aliens standing over it. I'm still alive in the grave. There is like a gravestone that says, "Here lies humanity," in like alien like text, and they're just like crying and stuff. And they're like making fun. They like, haha, you can't get your shit figured out. Like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, you can just go do drugs and smoke your alcohol, however humans do it. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna take care of the animals. You're not gonna destroy the whole thing. You can do whatever you want. And that's how that song came. I get like a couple of these songs that are like almost like aliens trolling me. And I'm like, this is a funny narrative for my brain to make up whole, but whatever. It's my brain. It's definitely my brain. It's atheist. Atheist being like I wrote a story about Ian McGilchrist and like his left brain, right brain thing, and basically atheist was like a name of a god that you did not believe in, and like that was justified by naming it as the right brain. It was all very fun and silly. Check this out. Is it this? Let's try it. Let's try this. Dear Ian McGilchrist. Gilchrist. Try this. Let's just see what this happens. Okay, wait. Dear Ian McGilchrist, I think you should talk, cause I think that would be nice. Dear Ian McGilchrist, I think we should talk, cause I think that would be nice. Got a will in me, I will says that I should talk to Ian McGilchrist. I got it in my head about a week ago, and now I don't leave me alone. Sometimes we're not in control, and we think we are. Sometimes we're not in control, and we think we are. Sometimes we're not in control, and we think we are. Sometimes we're not in control. It's crazy when we try to write a thing. It's crazy when that shit is happening. You feel it in the center of your brain. The movement that is making you insane. It wants to live, it wants to breathe, it wants to sing, it wants to feed. And what am I gonna do with this fucker? I could just leave it alone. No, I think I should write it down. Right brain, never leave me alone. Damn it. So dear Ian McGilchrist, I think we should talk, cause I think it would be nice. Dear Ian McGilchrist, I think we should talk, cause I think that would be nice. Look at the hook, look at the hook, look at your eyes inside the hook, look at the hook, look at the hook. First you got the beat, that's energy, then you got the seed. Amphetamine, I taught the man to eat. But he's on ketamine, needs to name the streets. Instead of thee, it's pathetic. Take some credit for you latent, sympathetic, energetic, like a medic on the scene, so empathetic. Cash a credit, don't you sweat it. Future bright, you so magnetic. Gonna get it, get him, get it. You got me saying, yeah, 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 yeah. A master and his emissary fucking on a bear. You got me saying, yeah, 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 yeah. Occam's razor phasing like a taser made of air. Well, so that song called Dear Ian the Gilchrist, even though I know his name is Gilchrist. I like that song. Would you believe it has not caused him to want to talk to me, to have a rap song about the duality of mind and perception? You think that, sort of creative outreach like that, a right brain mode. I tried to frame it to him. I was like, listen, this is like my right brain trying to talk to you instead of my left brain, but you're trying to filter everything through your structured, safe left brain, and you're not getting the notion that this is literally a direct connection of somebody trying to reach you beyond the ways that you normally do. He just couldn't make the connection. But I love this song. I probably will actually release this. I'll probably record this. I love the line, yeah, 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 yeah. A master and his emissary fucking on a bear. You got me saying, yeah, 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 yeah. Occam's razor phasing like a taser made of air. I love that. And also like the idea of thoughts having their own will that drive your actions. Sometimes you just get these things inside of your brain that's like it drives you to do something, and you have to choose. You have the autonomy to say, I'm not going to write this song, or like I'm not going to take this path, or I will. And just because you take it doesn't necessarily mean it will turn out right. That is what like the iris is trying to mediate, that we're always getting these messages in our head that tell us to take these steps towards these certain futures. And a lot of times we take these actions based off of like feeling justified morally, and then when our actions don't turn out right, we don't have any accountability. They want to say like, I tried to help, so that's all that matters. Like it actually matters whether you achieve it, right? It's not enough for you to say like, I tried to run for office and I tried to do this. Well, okay, but you didn't do it. You've been in this position for 30 years. You've never actually achieved anything. Why are you still in this position? And the answer why is because it's not correlated with the task that it's supposed to, like the motivating cycle is not like correlated with the actual task of the role. So you have like I do not have good feelings about interfacing truth through people. I'm sorry. I don't particularly enjoy the intense challenges that it takes to get people that all y'all listen to pay attention. Like I think it's really annoying that how hard it is to get Daniel to pay attention, to get Jordan to pay attention, to get like whoever it is to tune in and just like allow these ideas to bubble outwards, right? I don't like that I have to play this game. I don't like have to go parties. I don't like how it has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with prediction. It has nothing to do with epistemics. It has to do with how much I like make them feel good about themselves. And that's the old system. Like, I don't think that's good, where it's like, okay, I know that Tristan Harris is publicly talking about like he wants to help the planet and he wants to fix these problems. Okay. I fully feel 100% confident that if he and I had a conversation, it would make the world dramatically better. He would answer a lot of his questions. But I'm a stranger. Like, just that sentence, where does the trust come from to make him understand that that's fundamentally true, especially if I'm being erratic and frustrated by the whole process, right? The truth does not flow where it needs to go. You have all of these people very publicly like being like, I need an answer to this, or we have this problem. Like there was this creator philosophy tube, for example, they posted this beautiful long thing about effective altruism. In the middle of their problem was like, the leaders of the movement just simply do not listen to the people who are trying to give them feedback about what they're communicating. And so I tried this account who was complaining about this, that people aren't listening to them. I was like, okay, all of my work is fully relevant and just fully aligned with what they're saying. And I'm copying out like sections of it to just show it very clearly. But the algorithm cannot make the connection that this particular message from me should reach that person's voice. Because there's no intelligence to it. It's only basing it on like how many interactions that you've already had, or like how many people are liking it immediately. And so if I'm like in this world, or if anybody is in this world where they're like, if I could just tell this person this, if they could just hear this, then things would change. But they have no pathway. That's what I'm trying to solve with the iris. It's just being like, okay, listen, they can't hear it right now. Put it on record where it matters. Stake it to a record so that when time bears true, they can be, evaluated and downsampled on that particular topic. Because you have basically said, this is going to happen. They've said this is going to happen. What actually played out turned out to be very different. We should be able to be accountable to those signals. Matt Perkowski has this beautiful set of papers called Crypto Beyond Capitalism. It's about 5 different, I think it's a 5-part series, and it's just done so well about the notion that we just forget the things that people say and we continue trusting them. Like, we have politicians, they make these promises. Okay, fine. Those are predictions. Write them to a fucking prediction ledger. Nope. We're just going to throw them out. Like the best thing that we got is we have like president's promises, first 100-day promises tracker. And then it's like, that has no weight. It has no real value. It doesn't have the weight that money might have in affecting people's behavior. It doesn't have a real weight. What I'm saying is that you have to have a record that has that sort of stuff have real weight. Meaning, like, if somebody's very confidently, very clearly saying there is 100% that there absolutely will not be a fucking shutdown, and they say that, and lots of people act upon that knowledge, and then there's a fucking shutdown, it's pretty undeniable. Like, it's just undeniable to the record energetically about what actually happened. Of course, there can be like these edge cases where it's very hard because there's not enough people basically chiming in, right, about a specific subtopic. And so there will be a lot of uncertainty on certain things about whether the iris is confident about them. But it can know over time, like, who is really getting there ahead, who has the mental models that are really understanding the progression and the flow of things, and also are taking actions that seem to be resulting in the desired futures that other people are communicating they would like to see. This is the interplay between the profit incentive and social proof of impact, meaning that the profit incentive is we need to incentivize people to share information with the public, right? Not keep it private to them so that they can use it to make alpha, right? So there needs to be an incentive for publicly sharing to a record information that would prevent negative futures, right? So we have the profit incentive to incentivize people to say that shit, right? But we don't want those negative futures to happen. It's not just listening to the people who are saying this is going to happen. We then have to also amplify people who take actions in the name of that understanding that move away from that. So we have to have this generative tension between prediction and prophecy and like actions taken to avoid those unwanted futures or actions taken to manifest desired futures. Like, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to arrive in a future that is accountable to our perceptions right now. Lots of people are like, I don't want these things to happen. I don't want my job to be taken, or like these massive changes to happen because of AI. Now, clearly, like with no replacement system, if everybody's jobs get taken and they have no means to resources to provide for themselves, the whole thing breaks, right? The whole system breaks because of AI. So in the short term, you might be like, oh, I'm losing my job, this isn't good. But in the long term, if something takes root to capture or hold people as capitalism is falling out, and that system says, okay, like, I understand that that old job that you did, like, that was basically doing nothing, just pushing numbers on a page, now it's being managed by an AI. Fine, fuck that shit. Where are you in your life? What do you need to get self-secure, to get to a place of swaraj, to get to this place? You can't be fully self-sufficient, really. It's really hard to be energetically self-sufficient. But how do you get to the point where you're in good, stable flow with the membrane of community outside of you, where you don't feel that you are worried about the future constantly and whether things are going to come in? The discrete things that people talk about as having that, equaling that, are money right? Or like a job or something like that. And it's hard for people to understand the way of going back to a tribe where it's like you trust each other, you know each other. If somebody is asking for a particular thing, there is like this known knowledge about who this person is, what they might use it for, and it enables a type of sharing within that small community that actually can work. It's just, it never scales beyond that. Like, people sharing shit, gifting shit just doesn't scale without a real ledger. It's delusional. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you need to have records. You do need to have records, but the idea that you're just numbering things is not really going to get you. That's just capitalism, okay? You can record things and you can record actions that people are taking and like why they're taking them and what futures you're trying to avoid and what outcomes you're trying to reach. And then you can like make power be like who is being amplified in the context of those people working together towards a common goal. And that could be a very different thing. And people can still accrue and get their own resources either by gifting or by working through the capitalist domain. For example, you have a community of people who are trying to do this Cognicism thing. They could still, do traditional transactions, get in resources like, I want to bring this within this membrane bubble because I trust this record, I trust this group of people, and I know by gifting it within this space that it will be allocated towards like futures that I want to see, because I have already seen this record within this community of this process coming to pass. We're only just starting to see that in the Garden of Virus server, just as we cosplay it with the GPT, where it's like we have these threads that multiple people are talking in. And you can see like the sort of distribution of attention with your own eyes across the various sources. Like, you're sharing your thoughts, you're typing something, and then the iris or the GPT is writing this paragraph that is trying to create a narrative of the people working together. And you can just see the parts that are copied from each voice. And if you were just to color code those things, you could see like this is, and draw a pie chart, you could see the distribution of attention that the model is functioning on, right? Now, there's nothing that we have in GPT or in OpenAI that ensures that the person that is focused on is, aligned with goodness or like social impact or social sustainability. It has nothing to do with that. I'm trying to create a system where like we can take that signal, we take, okay, we know that the output of the generative model is very valuable and it's very useful. Okay, can we point back, can we honor, can we credit the sources of information from which it is being generated? And we can do that within these irises. Now, I don't, like I said, don't need a big corporation to do this. I just need to continue existing. And right now we have this, Metacrisis funding round. And it's not just that, like this money will help a little, but it's also, it's showing to people the value of it, right? By being like, happening to be over the course of it, the number one, Metacrisis project, I can show that to people who might be doubtful, and they can just take that very simple signal, because people know that money means something, right? They know that that has value. So if there's all these people who are saying, I'm going to contribute my value, they understand that very quickly has value. That's the way money works, right? That's the way you do this shorthand for cognition. And I didn't have that before. I didn't have this shorthand for cognition to say, hey, look, all of these people want this to come into being. However, it's specifically a system that is trying to create a new form of relationality beyond money itself, right? It's trying to create a new form of relationality that is based in trust, but not just trust because human memory is fallible. It's like trust where you have a more secure sense of memory. Oh yeah, I saw the brand thing with Ian, and I was like, that made me want to release the song, like, because I had basically felt like he was overwhelmed, Ian McGilchrist, by like me trying to reach him, and I was like, I'm too weird for him. And then I saw him talking to Russell Brand. I'm like, I'm gonna release that fucking rap song. I don't give a shit. I'm allowed to do shit like that. Yeah, solutions exist, but they are not evenly distributed, and so there has to be this willingness of people to give, right, without having to receive, right? If there's all this distribution of resources, like you're trying to get this solution, this pathway of exchanges where somehow it redistributes. Like, it's not going to do that by exchange because you're supposed to be some equality there. The way that you're going to get a distribution, if people are willing to gift towards downwards, and they'd be willing to gift downwards, they would be if they felt confident that those gifts actually would result in healing localities, and by giving those gifts and by those localities being healed, that their own reputation within the new system would rise because they are contributing, you know, their attention and resources towards regenerating things without an expectation for an inherent return. But if it does actually return in helping all people as determined by the commons, by public speech, all pooled together, then, you know, then the attention flows towards this person. And we can say that, okay, all of these people with great amounts of power that we now have a way to actually hold their actions accountable, but they have to be incentivized to do that. And one of the ways that they are incentivized to do that is the reality that when you give something, like, you're not taxed, right? That's why they do a lot of this already, right? They try to claim that they donate all this money to try to make themselves look good, but it's a very small amount and it doesn't actually lead to anything. This is a different way. This is actually keeping account of, like, okay, this person is saying that they're helping at this moment. Do they actually continue and follow through? Do the people who received the assistance, does it actually transform them, or is it a bubble, right? Is it something like The Good Place where they're only, you know, stay their healed ways for a certain amount of time and then they default and sort of decay back into their old being, right? Like, what we're trying to do is create sustainable healing and repair. If you go to somewhere like a sacrifice zone, like Haiti or Flint, Michigan, right? There is no monetary capitalistic incentive for the resources to flow into that locality to heal it, right? Because there's nothing for them to get out of it. That's what capitalism does. It extracts. So if you want to heal, you can't function on the token system. You need to function on something that is attention and gifting, like gifting intelligently. Like, there is this thing called, like, Greg Laswell wrote the story of the parable of liquidity, and there's like this idea that when people receive a lot of money before they're ready for it, they often don't use it well. And that's sort of where we're trying to avoid, and to stop, or to motivate rich people from being like, I know that's the case, but you just have to think fucking harder. Okay? Just have some patience. I understand that it is a tendency between when you give money downwards that the first thing they want to do is just buy some shit that makes them feel happy, right? Okay, think better then. What other resources can you get to that locality other than money that will actually transform it? What person can you bring in? Like, this is the idea that Cognicism is about lending your cognition and lending your attention to solving problems and getting credit for doing that. Now, you can have on the other side, you can willfully just give shit away, and that doesn't have to be a transaction. There's going to be two separate things that are not connected, and that can be the foundation for an entire new system. But yeah, I'm talking for a long time. Let's see what people are going to say. Oh, my tummy. 3. Let's see. My partner does have to do a call. So I think I'm going to come back in the meeting. There were no more contributors for this 2-hour stream, which is, it's fine. It was kind of a hope that there might be a few contributors for, the communication and the effort put in and the music, but it doesn't look like it happened. So I had planned to do another one. I might still do it. I don't know. My stomach hurts a little bit right now. But this was good. I feel like I said a lot of good stuff that was clarifying. And now you know about the deck. You've heard Derium McGilchrist. And what else is there? Got This Land. I don't want to play that right now. This Land is a song about land stewardship, like the concept of stewardship, of what it means to steward something. Like ownership is like you can shit on it really if you want, but stewardship is like, and it's technically the same thing because the line of ownership is fundamental and sacred. Like that's what we build our society on, is we make the transaction sacred, and then we say the big central entity can use violence to secure that the transaction is sacred. I know there's a lot of people who would probably reject my framing of that, but it's hard for me to not view it that way, because I view the incarceration of an individual or the prevention from accessing like or from their own autonomy as being violent. And I think that if you can basically censure a person to a point where if you just don't comply with the court, like you can be sent to jail. So it's an extent, like if you don't really participate, I don't know. Anyways, is there any more questions? My dog wants to go out. Is there any more questions that anybody has in this before I come back later in the afternoon? Until I come back later in the afternoon, does anybody have any questions about? I know I feel like it's violence, but then like people are like, that's this Exist view of things. I'm like, I don't know a lot of the names of a lot of philosophical views. I just think things and then they're in my brain. So if it's like a Marxist thing, or I don't know what that is, I personally feel like the restraining of autonomy, I mean, I know that somebody's trying to make the point that the first thing that they'll try to do is fees. And I was like, okay, but if you don't pay those, like these things can bubble up. You can't just say, fuck the court. You're not allowed to. In fact, just the being forced to go to court is something that is violent, because you're saying you don't have a choice. Even jury duty is violent, because they're saying you don't have autonomy. And, you know, we can't have a society that just purely maximizes autonomy. There's a play between like the freedom of the individual and the sort of harmonic symphony that is the collective and how they are interrelating with each other. Like there's only so far that we tolerate as a community for the individual to be able to press against the needs of the collective. It's that type of dance. And it's very hard for us to even say what exactly is freedom or autonomy when it's always existing in this relation to the perceptions of others. Now, I personally believe, and just studying psychology and just knowing just how fallible memory is, like human memory is so bad, right? And now we have these new, you know, social networks where we can just look back and we like time hop and we can see like, oh, this is explicitly what I said there. And I know that when I do that, like when I look at my old Facebook posts from like 15 years ago, I'm like, I can't believe I said that. That's clearly not aligned, right, with who I am now. But we have this problem where we can't even view people as systems of belief across time. Like somebody just gets canceled for like having some sort of intense belief or intense joke. And I think it's like it happens even when like a person has like very quickly in that timeline, like I immediately saw that was wrong. I immediately corrected my behavior, and I understood. Pippin, come on. But we're like treating people as they're these integrated wholes, and they're just not, you know, like across full time. Like our beliefs, our memories change. Like I am not the same exact person as I was in the past, but I can honor the fact that I say shit to people. And if they take actions on my words, I think there should be some accountability if they get harmed because I gave them some sort of piece of information that they rely upon. Now, I don't think that should be like money or like violence like the state, but I think like the distribution of an iris upon that specific topic slightly going down is not that bad of a punishment. And like just by adjusting your relationship to the world, you know, you can just be, you know, reassured. And you know what? If there's a case where it's like you still believe that no, like the tide has shifted, but I'm still right, just stick it out. That's what it is. Like continue staking until the more evidence comes that shapes the views of the collective. There is a movement of the Overton window all the time. Right? It's always moving forward and back and shifting and shaping, and like that's why you really need something like latent space to make sense of these evolving dynamic relational belief sets. It's not enough to have something like a prediction market where you're just predicting discrete values. It's very, very fuzzy. It's very forward and back. It's not like things fully get decided or things fully don't get decided. It's like there's always a few people outside of there who are like, no, that didn't happen. Whether it be COVID, like they'll say like, no, there wasn't ever even a virus at all, right? For most of us, we say that's not true. But like you want the security of being 1 or 0. And it's just not the way it works out. The way it works out is there's a distribution of people and they have a distribution of beliefs about outcomes. And you're trying to create this singular truth narrative that just doesn't exist. What you have is an evolving map of relational beliefs. That is what you actually have. You do not have this yes, no binary truth reality. That's just not what it is. And so we can take these GPT models and we can adjust them to actually help us heal the planet. But right now, all of the attention is flowing towards using them to just support the existing system. I'm trying to, with a very minimal level of investment towards this project, I'm trying to give people the tools that they need for free to be able to build it out. And you can go out and you can start your own irises, and you can go out and you can start your own conferences and talk about them. It is a concept that is part of the commons. And if it can take root in many different people's minds, if they say, hey, I have this particular worldview, whether it be like a particular type of crypto that believes in this, or I have this particular worldview, I'm going to bring the iris in to represent my beliefs. They gradually learn the inconsistencies. Like, where am I being stubborn? Because it reflects back to you your own beliefs and how they're connected over time. And it helps you become more integrated with reality itself. It's almost like, with religious people that say, I have a personal relationship with God. Well, this is a personal relationship with a reflection of reality, as determined by specifically people you care about and people that are in your network that you have chosen to listen and chosen to follow, and people that you are resonant with and who have achieved changing the world together in a positive direction. That's what this is about. And I, for one, think that's a whole lot fucking sexier than just like, okay, $1. I know that it's cool that you can make a chain that, can print these dollars out of nothing, and then suddenly other people can suddenly decide that they're valuable. But that's not, it's just why? Like, you're chasing a prediction that is not even based off of anything. It's like, will people chase Pepe as a meme? Will meme bro? And it's like, okay. And I don't think crypto is going to evolve or break out of this mentality. That's how people view crypto, as being extremely greedy, that it's not really about doing what they claim to do. And if you can create a blockchain that really is bound to social good, then you can actually sort of transform the world. That's why I put a lot of energy into finding these small groups of people who I think are very aligned, like Regen Network. Like, what is the closest possible version of what I'm talking about that still exists within the monetary frame? That will work if the attention flows through it, right? But I also am trying to provide that alternative option, provided that, the monetary tokens or the monetary reference to social impact don't fully take root. And I know that there needs to be some sort of traditional like crypto infrastructure that secures this latent space at large. That's what we talk about, the semantic ledger. It does need to exist. And I can't build everything myself, but I'm also viewing and seeing all these things emerging on their own, and also my own workforce being multiplied like 50-fold by GPT-4. I understand people like, oh, you need to have a big team before. I'm like, do I? Oh, I can just pull up a bunch of GPT-4 things. Like, it's gonna listen to me like more directly and understand me more directly and write code faster than anybody else. And so why don't I just do that? Why don't I just not make it like be a big thing that's centered around me? Because that's the whole thing I don't want. I don't want it to be centered, right? If you have an organization, then it has energetic power that forces the center. If I'm a person, there's no energy to force it to be around me. I just become somebody that the waves crash over. And as long as I'm resolute to that and feel comfortable with seeing like iris here, iris there, iris there, iris there, and also like just get to continue to speak about how then we can start to bring those things together, then I think that something can take root that does not have a controlled center. We can actually get something truly decentralized, but people have to be willing to just give up some of that control, to give up some of that certainty. And that's what like I have chosen to do over these 5 years, is like, okay, get the fucking manifesto out, get the prior art out, so that there's like really nobody can say shit. Play the long game of 5 years, which took so long, but now we're here. And like I'm trying to put everything I possibly can on as quickly as I can. So there's just like an inherent freedom to these tools for everybody. And everybody can use them to heal their locality. That is what I am dreaming of. And I know that there will be people who try to own it, who try to control it, who try to force it, who try to bastardize it. But I think that that's why it makes sense for us all as individuals just to be self-directed, to be communicating to each other, to be sharing knowledge and taking our own independent choices with the knowledge that these things are coming forth. And it's weird. I almost don't even view Cognicism as coming from me. It's like almost like it came from the universe, and it was something that is already out there, like already existing on other planets or some bullshit like that. I don't really view it as coming from me. I just view myself as being a vector that maybe put together all the parts. And now to me, it's just like there's this structural advantage that we have, whereas it hasn't bubbled up to the people in power yet. Right? Like as soon as it does, as soon as it bubbles up to those people in power, they'll try to stop it. So I just need to reach enough people to bring this into being before like the power up at the top can re-manifest something that is the anti-iris, that is something that is like structurally trying to reinforce their own power, structurally trying to reinforce their own wealth. That is what is going to happen. Like all of these people are building in these LLMs into their stack. And like even like the internet can have pure filtering based off of like these GPT. They're going to be these moderators, but without some sort of centrally like logic that handles the sort of moderation. We're just going to get into these pockets of beliefs. We need to integrate those beliefs. We need to have a way for different worldviews to interface. And in my mind, what that is the semantic ledger. I think the semantic ledger, the idea of these multiple prophets having these different irises, having these different encoded worldviews, and then when two groups feel like they trust each other enough, then you can start to plug those models together. You can start to share sort of constitution text, and you can share like the latent representations of your collectively held meaning and start to optimize towards each other and share knowledge directly, almost like genetic exchange, but it's mimetic, right? That is what we talk about in the original Cognicism Manifesto, is that there is this process by which two irises come into relation. They form something like a written agreement, and then they both say those words, but the two irises will produce their embeddings for the same set of words, and they'll be different, right? That's the whole point, is they're representing the same knowledge differently. So when one group thinks about that sentence, it might be a little bit differently than how the other person is thinking about the sentence. So what they do is they're starting to trust each other. They've created a binding, and so now their loss functions are entangled in a way that is updating towards each other. I asked the other day, like, how did DAOs fuse? And I asked at the beginning of this, like, well, I view the iris as the center of a DAO. Well, I would view that as what you do. You come into the state where you believe that you trust each other. So you start to form the words that you do connect on. You share those and you share the embeddings. And therefore your knowledge can become bound and come into relation. And that the result of that compression between irises can be stored to the semantic ledger for all peoples to have access to. And because you're doing that at that stage, you're basically bubbling it up to the global level, which means that those people within those two irises who are making claims about the world at large suddenly can have their reputation amplified by irises at the world at large. They can have a reputation outside of their own iris, reputation across irises, so that when they go from place to place to place, that they can be trusted where they're going, even if they don't directly know a person. Now, the less aligned that an embedding space is, that probably the less you're going to want to trust that person. But if you can make sense and you can see that, like, generally your irises produce similar things for similar outputs, you can say, hey, we can actually have a fucking conversation, because we know that, like, we're kind of talking on the same latent representations in our brain, because we can see that, like, the irises have learned this complex representation of meaning that is reflecting the humanity in both of us fairly equally. I think a big part of it is our words have lost their meanings and we can't think of reason clearly about the concepts. I like the book, The Annabelle Evil, largely for this reason. Agree completely. I think there is accountability in reality, but it is obfuscated from us through the complexity of effects. Iris would be too cool away this fog. Agree completely. I think there's accountability in actuality, but the causal links are obfuscated. Oh, it's the same thing. And I think the attitude of decentralized is essential to the success of the vision, yeah. Yes, ideas come when their time is to now, and the minds that are open to them. And also, I've studied connectomics a lot, basically the mind maps, to be able to accept that new ideas need vectors or nodes to flow along. And it's made it a lot easier because I have GPT-4. I wrote, for example, to John Vervaeke my letter, my truth, what I thought would actually reach him. And then I said, okay, here's the thing. You need to connect this to what his memes, right? And a friend brought in the term psychotechnologies, and I just pulled up YouTube's transcript that he had on that. I used GPT to summarize all 2 hours down into it, and I copied it in. And then I asked for it to elaborate even more, and said, like, can you connect my thing more to what his ideas, so that he can make sense of it? And it pulled up this concept of relevance realization, which is how we, like, sort of sense make and make the information that comes to us in the moment that is valuable, and that is what Iris is trying to do at a broader sense. And so, like, I left that in. It says, like, okay, in particular, this is connected to relevance realization, because it is. Because when I read it and I read the letter, I'm like, yeah, that sounds right when I read his description of it. But it wasn't why I reached out to him. I didn't know that term until afterwards. But he has that term now to make sense. You know what I'm saying? And so, but that only exists because I have access to the knowledge about him in embedding space. Right? Because he is known enough for his words to have reflected in GPT latent space. That is not true for all people, right? Like I said online, the same thing with Matt Perkowski, which is that I took an article by him from like 2018 or 2017, and I stripped away the author credit and I posted it into GPT-4, and it's like, who wrote this? And it's like, Jordan Hall wrote this. I'm like, no. And they're like, yes, Jordan Hall wrote this. It's called this article. And I like search up the article. There's nothing in existence of this other article that like Jordan supposedly has written. But either way, it's like all of the information in there was scraped. And if I ask GPT-4, who is Matt Perkowski? It does not know. And I know that Matt Perkowski and Jordan Hall are like aligned in their perceptions. And so what does GPT-4 do? It says, Jordan Hall wrote this. But we should all be credited, right? Like if I'm injecting knowledge into the world via Twitter, it's fucked up if I'm not famous enough. That means that somebody else gets the credit for it. That's weird. Like that is not, I mean, that is how it is. Like we create these delusional like copyright laws where we like give copyright to the first person who can just get there in the system, and be secured in there, but not the first actual time-stamped representation of thing. Even when we look at copyright law, we can look back in time and we can see literal songs that precede it. Does it self-correct? No, it does not self-correct. It still protects the person who was there second. Up to the point where even their progeny, you know, Ed Townsend's daughter or whoever was, can sue in the estate for songs that they didn't write. Like because they own the sequence of numbers or of notes. That's insane, right? But that is basically how it works. Is like you, as long as you're well known enough, you get the credit. It doesn't matter if there is some kid in a room somewhere who wrote, you know, some riff that, you know, he played at some club and some, you know, jackass heard it and was like, I'm going to steal that, right? It doesn't matter whether that happened. That's not how reality works right now. I just would like to see a world where the people who are not well connected but who are epistemically sound have a means to have their voice be heard. Like I truly believe that part of the problem is just that like there are people who are disconnected from the people who could take the lowest energy action to help them. Meaning like you have a person, for them to get the outside of this situation, it would take an insane amount of energy because they just don't have anything around them. For this person to transform their life, it would take almost no energy. We need to find a way to create that binding between that such that this person can take the actions that they can take with the resources and capacity that they do have to actually heal their locality. It's that connecting. It's like if you can get the people at the top to gift downwards, if that can come and be motivated, then we can solve these problems. But you're not going to transact a redistribution. I don't know. I want to say 100%. I tend not to do say 100%, but I just don't. I would say like 99%. You're not going to transact your way to wealth distribution. You're not going to legislate your way to wealth redistribution. You might be able to motivate and incentivize people to gift downwards because of earning, in a sense, the proof of contribution or the proof of tangible change in that person's life. Right? Meaning it's not enough to just give a resource. The resource has to actually lead to something, and you have no control or recourse because it's not tied at all to the gift. It's just how you're feeling. It's just a record of free speech. Those things are kept separate. So people have suggested binding. It makes it more complex. Trust me. Like legally, there's no just make it. You gift. You keep track of what is happening. There's no reason to, and behind all of that, you can still do all of the transactions. You live in a capitalist society. Don't fucking worry about that. Don't try to worry about forcing it together. You still exist in that world. If you want to have private ownership, fine. But if you want to collaborate with a group of people towards healing the world, okay, then it should be based off of a ledger of truth and impact. It should not be based off of like money and like, okay, this is how we feel in this moment. It should be based off of like actual outcomes based off of the actions that you take, and like you can achieve that through this ledger. And then by taking advantage of the fact that you are allowed to just give people things and that the government is primarily involved when it comes to like specific transactional exchange, then you can create another system that builds on top of this, can motivate people who are wealthy to want to give to people to rebuild their own localities. Then we can start to regenerate things and get the money flowing in the right direction. But it's very hard for me to imagine where you have a tit for tat exchange that causes it to be redistributed. I think that you have to have this thing where it's like people don't believe. Like for example, you have this wealthy person. Most people don't believe that by this person helping them with this resource, right, that it will actually help them for whatever reason. But if they have actually attended their attention, if they've actually used their cognition and they've actually found a particular resource to solve one of the hardest problems, then that becomes a very powerful social proof. They will be motivated specifically to tackle harder problems, to tackle harder places with more dilapidation, right? The worse, the more dilapidated a place is, the more ruined a place, the more motivation there is for a wealthy person to try to fix that, because it is the least likely thing to happen. Do you get it? Do you get the prediction part of this? If you look at Flint, Michigan, if you look at Haiti, it's very unlikely for it to be healed. So if you have a person like Elon or somebody who's like, I'm gonna fucking do it, I want to prove it, and I'm gonna prove that it's going to happen, and everybody's like, no, there's no way, and then he does it anyways, that's social proof of impact. They did it. Okay? And that's where they're motivated specifically to do the hardest parts, to distribute to the people who might have those drug addictions, that might have an inability to locally take their own action. Those are really hard things to do. They take a lot of effort to transform that locality, right? And so there will be efforts to like hedge bets on the lower, but the big wins, the gigantic wins of reputation in the system come from gifting to people who are suffering and who most people believe it's almost impossible to get them back to a place of self-sufficiency. When you're like, okay, this person is gone, and that is really useful. It's really helpful for like homeless people. Like, oh, nobody wants to talk to homeless people because like they're drug addicts or they're crazy or they're very hard to deal with. Okay, fine. It's a harder problem. More people predict it won't be healed. Great. That's a great opportunity for a person with a lot of will and a lot of resources to fight against the crowd. To say, both parties want it to happen. You know, you got the poor people who want like their lives to get better, and you have the rich person who wants their lives to get better because they want the proof. They want the proof that they are a good person and that they're contributing well, so that like people want to continue interacting with them. I feel like I'm particularly making sense right now. I feel like that part is really what it comes down to, is that like I'm trying to say that through this predictive mechanism of impact, it's using the iris, and by relying on this gifting mechanism and keeping these alternate records and having this be this contextual reputation thing, which is literally just a speech mechanism, that you don't actually have to fucking change shit. You don't have to fight against the government for having different rules of trying to like do something. You don't have to be like, you still exist within the capitalist society, but now you have a mechanism that motivates regenerating localities when there is not a financial incentive. The incentive becomes the transformation of that locality, and that is secured by what I talked about earlier in the conversation, was the further you go back in time, the more secure the chain is, and then the further you go forward in time, the harder it is to predict with absolute certainty the outcome, especially when it comes to people who are suffering, who need to find a place of stability, a stable energy engine of like forward collaboration and coherence. Right? So there's this relationship between the challenge of the work it would take to transform a person's future and the security of it on the chain. And when you have this notion where it's like you're upcycling, you're upsampling the people who are taking on these hardest futures that the people want to see the most happen, and you're allowing people who are wealthy to gift in a way that because gifting is not like taxed, right? You're enabling a system where people can be motivated to actually change the world, but not for token. And when you do it that way, it opens up a lot of things. This is why I get so fucking frustrated when people are like, but what about the token? Do you have the token? Do I have the coin? I need to jump and hit the box and get the coin. Because the coin, I need it. There's points. It was very bad, Mario. Let's see what we got here. Yay! I mean, that was okay. So that thing that I just went on a diatribe about like that relation from the wealthy to the dilapidated. Omni-harmonic, Benjamin Life, we had a long conversation about this, and we had to like walk through the park or through the marsh, and I felt the same sense as after I had just now, that like I had reached somebody, that somebody had connected to what I was saying, and that they had understood that this was a fundamental paradigm change, and therefore like they would want to engage further in it. And then people were very confused by me a few weeks later when they posted something that was just like, I care about these people, and it was like a list of names, and like I was like, you don't love me, or something like that, like just like, I don't really feel like this is a real energy or real attention. This isn't what I'm looking for out of this type of relation. And a lot of people were really mad at me because I didn't give the context, which is to say, I had exposed myself with my heart for these ideas, and explained it to them in a way that I had not exposed to other people. And I had hoped that that would translate into some sort of like attention, care, or real communal connection. And they were just busy, okay? And that's fine. That is fine for people to be busy. But it's just, the outcome for me was that like the way that they were showing up was by copy pasting my name. And for me, that's like, I'm trying to build this cognitive community where I explained that the things that matter most are really the attention and care to the solving the hard things. And so when it seems like the energy back is just like a reference to my name and not a reference to the idea, or not a way to like express those things outwards to other people in a real way, it didn't feel like care. It didn't feel like it was showing up. And I can be pretty reactive at times when it comes to stuff like that. Or like, my biggest ones are obsessing with money, like a token, like any system or solution that just keeps falling back towards token. I cannot stand that. Like, to the point where they just can't hear a single fucking thing that I'm saying. Like, I'll say it 10 times, and they'll just it's like it just goes in one ear and right out the other. I cannot. It just drives me mad. And I'll say negative things to people even when I have normally positive conversations, because I think it's something that needs to be called out publicly. And then the other thing is exclusionary groups that prevent it's basically anything excluding or preventing information from flowing. So like, if a person of influence refuses to have a conversation over like a year, not over like a week, but like over a fucking year, where it's like they keep saying the same thing. Yes, we'll have this conversation. So it's like they keep making predictions and they're just lying. Like, that is how I felt with somebody like Tristan Harris, where he just keeps saying it's going to happen and then it just never happens. So it's like, I trying to be like, your word is not matching up. Like, you are not being held accountable to your word. You're existing in this place where you're just saying things and they're not coming true. That's the other thing, is that I can't stand when the information can't flow. And then when there's private events where progress happens, and they invite a lot of people who are influential or wealthy, and like they don't give a route for people who are disconnected to have around. It's just like, you're just doing the same fucking problems. You're just putting the power around the system that already exists. Like, there has to be some redistribution of attention to the people who are not being heard. And I know a lot of people like that. Like Connor McCormick, he has this thing called Options. And he has like a lot of really good ideas about how you can alter money as it exists to have this sort of future accountability to morality within that. It's not somebody who's being really amplified a lot, The same thing, like that pro-socialize project. Like, there was a frustration from that creator, even though they were behind this net NBR thing, which was this, I can't remember the acronym, but it's another similar type of thing, but it's a not money solution. They're like, it's a non-money solution to coordination. Like, that is something where they're not getting attended. Right now, there's a lot of attention to the Iris project, and that's great. That there is, but like, I talked to them and they were frustrated because it was like it comes down to humans. It feels like people are expecting like the iris to do the thinking for them, and I've even seen people share about it like, oh, I'm gonna let iris think for me. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like it reflects the data that you put in. It's an interface to your community. It's not thinking for you, and that's why it needs and has to have this source attribution that people aren't understanding. People are just like, okay, it says the thing. I'm saying it should say the thing, and then it should say who the fuck it sourced those patterns from, so that you know you're not just talking to a separate being that you're calling the model. You're actually talking to real people. Like you're talking to a representation of your community. And if they want to come in and they want to correct that knowledge because they're being cited or sourced inappropriately, then they can, because they can be alerted to the fact that they are being referenced, you know? Yes, Care, the Lost Universal Pencil. Like, my favorite person in the sort of what I call the gigabrains is Forrest Landry. I mean, he's a very kind and compassionate person who really shows their attention and care. Like, he and I disagree fundamentally about like certain aspects of AI, but like he shows up in a way that almost nobody does, and shows real attention to like the words that I think have value, whereas other people will just leave like messages on read for a very long time, or just never address it. And then when I try to point to the fact that they've just read it, they just don't address it. It's very hard for me that way. But Forrest is like this guy who is trying to build out a new form of relationality around human relation. And that is also what I see in the Banished Moloch project and the Metacrisis round, is like the focus needs to be on the humanity. And I get why people sometimes see the iris as a name and think that it's like integrated as that. But the truth is, when you make an iris, you name it, or it names itself. And it's supposed to represent something that the community comes together. It's a token. It's a cultural token that represents the people coming together. And yes, you can have your own. But it's really like, that's a very capitalist notion or individualist, I guess, notion. And the real value is the communal aspect of like, once you have like something that could express your views well, that allowing the iris to bring your patterns in to help other people freely, you know, and you get credited because you're being referenced in that moment. So it's like you're pointed at, you're not getting a token or anything in your thing, but you're saying, hey, I trust this person the most. Why do I trust this person? Because we have this loss function that is related to expressions over time of truth, and like their repetitions of patterns. It's very hard to explain if you don't have a information theory background. It's something that really only Matt Perkowski seems to be able to, not only, there's a new guy I haven't followed yet who has like 12 followers, because I don't know whether I can trust them yet, even though they're saying things that feel resonant. That's one of the things about the iris, is like it takes a while for an iris to trust a person because it needs that record. And if there's no record, even if it's like saying a lot of things now, like it won't have the same weight in affecting the distribution of attention as it would for something very, very long back in the record, right? And that's another thing. So there's like different scales of predictions, and one of the ways that like you can basically ensure your future with an iris is to share thoughts about the future, to predict thoughts about the future, because if you do long-term thoughts, the iris is going to connect back into the future to those predictions, right? To make sense of that signal, right? So inherently in that future, your voice will get referenced and will get attended to for being sort of having the foresight in the first place. Now, the further you go ahead in a prediction, the noisier it's going to be, the rarer it's going to be, the more scarce like that predictive signal is going to be. So it should be rewarded and amplified quite a bit when people do happen to get it right. And then the iris can know that moving forward, that person, at least in that topic, should be amplified more. And perhaps the person who was a leader who didn't get it, or who kept living inside of that mimetic bubble that I talked about earlier, perhaps that like they are downsampled. And so we never get this big blowing up of the bubble from the person inside of the bubble who refuses to accept the information. We just have like still growth in a way, but not growth that doesn't reflect the underlying distribution of reality. That's, I try to say over and over, like, I truly believe that bubbles are not, they're a predictable feature of token-based exchange. Just, they're predictable. It just happens. And it's a nature of the way that we quantify value and the drift, particularly in relationships to things like inflation and the idea of its meaning, right? Like the meaning of a dollar changes over time because it doesn't have the same value over time. Words do that too, in some extent, but for the most part, like they really hold their same value over time. Like the means the, dog means dog, and we have new sequences of characters in the future that point to the same thing, right? And the long, semantic chain is going to actually capture those evolutions of knowledge, so that like, hey, if you want to scan back and talk about in the 90s, you can pull up the latent, well, not 90s, but like now, if this started now, but if you want to go in the past, you pull up those latent representations of the time, right? You can see the text as stored on something else, but you can compare that the latent, like the latent space of that time will form different types of thoughts than you might form from those thoughts, because it meant something differently. The language has, in fact, evolved over time. That's why it's a semantic ledger. It is a ledger of collective meaning, collective belief about time and truth and what is good over time, in a way that is directing attention towards the people who are really aligned with that across these time scales, right? In a way that really reflects the large volume of voices over time, right? The thing with like a transaction, the like, it's very easy to hack. It's not easy, but I mean, like, what you have to prevent in a Bitcoin attack. It's the moving of a particular token to another account. That's one discrete action. To reshape the latent space, like, of the entire district, you can't just magically change two numbers because, or like a bunch of numbers, because then it won't produce reasonable output. It's not immediately clear how exactly you hack the latent space, because it's all tangled up together. There's no specific, you can't go and find that one row, right? All of Bitcoin is based on this like notion that we have to secure that one token from moving to another place. There's nothing like that. It's contextually, dynamically calculated relative to the moment. If two people are talking and the iris is mediating their exchange, then the score, right? The score of who it is, because it's trying to constantly say synergistic satisfiers that bring in the best knowledge, the best truth at that moment, right? From the best sources, right? And it can do that, and it can basically attribute in that moment who it's trusting. Yeah. Yeah, I want to enable people to have meaningful lives. I want to enable people to feel like their relationship to reality is strong and positive. Like, there are times that I'm so frustrated with reality because it's like I was shown this pathway to help other people, but because it's such a hard pathway, because the probability of me doing this very hard task is very low, I just get, it's so hard. Like, day to day, doing the things that I have to do to keep this true to what it's supposed to be, and not get tangled down a pathway that is easier, but will just get tangled up with other wills in a way that steamroll or prevent the technology from reaching like other people. I think I need a break from my voice, and I'll come back. I think the thing closes at 5, and there's 24 people. Would be cool if we could get that one more, or 2 or whatever. That'd be sick. Any amount that you can possibly donate would be good. We've got some good donators. You know, we got Jordan Hall. That was pretty sick. And we got Jim Rutt. That was pretty sick. And all the other ones are like obscured to my account. I don't know why they do it that way. Like I've had to have people explicitly tell me whether they've donated. But it'd be cool. And like what I'm doing and engaging with consistently in the context of the network is engaging with uncertainty, engaging with like the hardest path, engaging with the thing that's like, well, there's not that likely of a path to this, but it still has to happen. And the probability is increased over time. Like when I wrote the manifesto, I was like, there's a 4% chance that I could succeed, but I had security of money. So therefore I felt it was the right thing to do. So even though there wasn't a high probability of success, I felt like I should go do it. Now I'm in a position where it's like, I almost feel like there's over 50% chance of success on something like this taking root. There's still like plenty of room for failure and for like a lot of bad things to happen, where like a bastardized version of it. But like everybody I talk to now knows what GPT is. So it's like the foundational mimetic that I can channel through. Prior to GPT going viral, nobody understood what I meant. Like I couldn't, there was no way to even express or make GPT make sense. And if I would say things, like I said over and over, this was my big line, this was my big statement. And of course, there's no network, so I'm not amplified for saying this ahead of the curve. Fucking stupid. But I said over and over that language models encode knowledge. And I said it just like with a lot of confidence. I like put it on the screen, put it like 100% certain. And like people still doubted me. Plins. Like what's his name? Joe Shabak. Like there was this pushback upon me on that basic thing. He's like, sure, it can code. Like he was just like, no. And eventually I got him to say like, maybe, but it doesn't make it operational. I'm like, yes, it does. And like all these people were liking him and his points of view. It was never corrected. It still hasn't been corrected. That error on his behalf. Now he's like, okay, obviously it makes it operational. And I think there's like things like this all over the land where it's like, okay, you have a person of power and you have a person of not power disagree with them. This has been happening to me since I was a little kid. I used to bring in like books from home where like a teacher would say one thing, and I would just be like, that's not true. And it really depended on the teacher. Some would punish me or like be really mad that I corrected them. And then there was the type of teacher who rewarded me and who honored for like amplifying the truth. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, it was the first time that a teacher honored me doing this. But she basically said that there are no bats that drink blood. There were no bats that drink blood. That's just a myth. And like that was the teaching point. And I was like, that's not true. I have this book and I know that vampire bats exist. I know that there is it's not like the way it is in the books, but they do, like they'll bite the ankle of, animals and they'll lick up the blood. That is a real thing that does exist. And I brought in the book and she praised me for it. And like she showed it to the whole class and she corrected herself for like having that error. And that, I think that was in a big place, the foundation of like the growth of my own mind. Even in that time, like I remember starting like an inventors club, feeling like encouraged by this teacher to explore my own cognition. And I ended up that year going off to some like special program for some, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was this change where I was no longer viewed as somebody who had a detriment, a learning deficit, because I had been diagnosed as AD. Instead, I was suddenly viewed as this person who was, actually quite intelligent and could actually challenge, if you had the right person who was willing to accept when they were wrong. I suddenly had a real guide that would honor and reflect that the power dynamic. And I think I've always wanted that capacity to speak truth to power and not have be punished for it for my whole life. That's really what I've been trying to develop with this. It's just to be like, how do I make the truth matter? How do I make it matter? All right. Yeah, I'm gonna end the stream for now because I just need to get some food, and yeah, but this is fun. 10:20. It's a long stream. It's a long, good old stream. So, hope you're well. And thank you for tuning in. And hopefully before 5, if you haven't donated to the Metacrisis, that we can either post it if you already have, or donate if you haven't. That'd be great. And maybe we can get some of them matching funds, What? Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.